The question that I will be answering is question number 1, that talks about the Hebbian learning model, or the Hebbian, just pretty much just Hebbian learning. So essentially what Hebbian learning is that it's that neurons that fire together are wired together in the long run. So eventually that when one neuron fires and it does the subliminary action with it, then those two neurons are in the future going to fire at the same time. For example, if someone tells me to lift my right hand, the action of lifting my right hand and the words that say lift my right hand, those two neurons in the premotor and the motor complexes are wired together, right? So this was done by Olaf Hawk's experiment, or the experiment that was written by Olaf Hawk. In that, so essentially what happens in this experiment is that he tries to see, using MRIs and EGGs, or fMRIs and EGGs, to see if this is actually true, that if the pre-cortex motors and the motor cortexes overlap when an action word the action word is said and that specific action is done. And by taking MRIs and EGGs, he's seeing if neurons in those two cortexes are firing at the same time. After doing the experiment, and so a group of people were given different action words, like to do with their leg, their arm, and their face. And so the experiment showed that the arm, for the finger movement was tied with the legs, or the hand movements were tied with the face, essentially. So what happens is that when someone is said to lift their leg, the precortex neuron fires, registering the lift your leg, and at the same time the motor neuron, which is lifting the leg, fires at the same time. So the Hebbian learning process is that eventually in the future, when someone is told to do the same thing, like lift your leg, it should be an automatic gesture, that if someone says lift your leg, your left is being lifted, because of this Hebbian Hebbian learning process. And so what does that have to do with language learning, essentially? So there's the Wernicke-Gershwind model, which pretty much has 3 areas: the Broca area, the Wernicke area, and the accurate fasciculus area, which connects the 2 areas. So the Broca area is language production, right? So someone has not a disease, a fault in the Broca area, they can't make words. So they'll understand, they could comprehend, but when they go to talk about that certain word, they can't make that word, right? And on the other hand, the Wernicke area is comprehension. So they could make words, right? But what they say isn't grammatically correct. Like, it wouldn't make sense on what they're saying. And so these 2 areas have to work together in order to make sentences and learning, right? So this is the neuroscience part of the Hebbian learning Hebbian learning model, because if one of these areas is faltered, then pretty much your grammar either will be off or your word production will be off. But working together, one comprehends the words and the other one produces the words. And so pretty much in language processing is a dual stream model. The dorsal stream, which it takes speech inputs that we hear and it translates it into actions, right? So everything we hear translates into action, the Hebbian learning model. And so it pretty much helps determine our movement. And then the second one is the ventral system, which identifies the content of the speech and then and what those words mean. So it's pretty much not the Broca system, the Wernicke model, which it comprehends the words, right? So essentially what's happening is that all these things are working together so the Hebbian learning process is what's happening in the Hebbian learning process is that 2 areas of your brain are working simultaneously together, and without one, the other one cannot, or you as a person, your brain cannot develop words, or on the other hand, cannot understand words. There was an experiment done called the WADA test, which half your brain is put to sleep. And in this test, the left hemisphere of your brain was put to sleep and the person could not make proper words, right? So they were understanding everything, but they were not able to make words. So what we can see from the Hebbian learning model and everything else is that all these systems have to work together, that comprehension and production all need to work together. And the Hebbian learning system overall shows that someone who comprehends a certain aspect, someone who listens, someone who is told a gesture, they could reproduce that gesture accordingly to what the gesture that was told them for them to do.